This is Omnisport Africa. We are putting African sport first, live and on demand on your phone, data free on the MTN network in South Africa. T's and C's apply, and online at omniaudio.africa. Because reading about it tomorrow won't help you today.
Welcome to No Punches Pulled. Today's guest is Cape Townian Deon Dwarte, who is arguably Africa and South Africa's best boxing official, registered with Boxing South Africa and accredited by the ABC, which is the Accredited Boxing Commission, which is a global commission around the world. Deon, welcome to the show, and how are you doing in Cape Town?
Morning, Colin. Yeah, it's good. A bit rainy today, but I'm all good. Thank you.
So thanks for being interviewed. I mean, I literally had to beg. I inboxed you and I said, I thought this would be a really great interview. And the reason why I thought it'd be a great interview is that I thought you could give a lot of depth and insights to what it's like being a judge, what it's like being a referee, making certain decisions. And sometimes you got to, I wouldn't say it's an impulsive decision. It's a very logical decision also when you stop a fight. But let's get into your career first. Deon Dwarte, how did you get into boxing? How old were you? Your fascination? Let's start there.
Okay, well, I started in 1998. Yeah, I started in 1998. And I've been officiating ever since. So I actually started boxing with Basil Bryce down in Cape Town. That was, I think it was, I was in high school, but 84, 85, I started boxing with him. I wasn't really good. I mean, I was able to compete at club level, but once I stepped up to provincial level, I had a couple of wins, but not many. When I went to I did military service in 1988 to 89. And in the military, I was also very fortunate that I was given the opportunity to box there as well. Gary Murray was in my boxing team. We boxed in Kimberley. It was I boxed at what do they call a defense force level. So at that time, defense force was very strong. I think I fought in 88 in the South African Defence Force Championships, and in 89 in Defence Force Championships. At that time, the championships was guys like Philip Holiday, Andre Taylor was there. Was a number of Gary Murray, Mark Cameron, a lot of guys who actually went on to achieve great things. Unfortunately, that wasn't destined for me. Well, not in terms of actual physically fighting. I think I was always destined to go another route, because it just wasn't my thing, to get hit in the face continuously. So that's my boxing career so far.
So let's start now. That was the background to you, obviously being fascinated with sport and obviously being an amateur fighter. What made you in 1998 become an official for Boxing South Africa?
Okay, I used to attend a lot of shows down in Cape Town. Good Hope Centre, I used to attend some shows, and then eventually when it moved over to the military base in Wynberg. They used to have a lot of shows there. And one Sunday afternoon, there was a SA title fight. It was Nkusile Kondile against Zonkifana. I think that was November 97. Oh, I went and I watched the fight, and when the result was given, they declared the fight, I think, was a majority decision to Kondile. And I was convinced from watching the fight live that Fana won. and I think the majority of the crowd over there were convinced, except for the judges. After the fight, I walked up to the ring, and I don't know if you can remember Mr. George Freddy. He was the secretary of the Western Cape Commission. I went up to him and I said, "Afternoon, sir. I want to become a judge." He looked at me and he said, "What do you want to? Why do you want to become a judge?" I said, I thought Fano was robbed." And I always believed that I could make a difference in boxing. Eventually, he took down my name and my number. Back then, we didn't have cell phones, so everything had to be done on a landline. And I never got the call. And I think it was about February, March next year. I phoned him and I asked him like, "What's happening?" He says, "No, there's nothing at the moment." Eventually carried on, and then in I think it was mid-March. What I basically used to do, I used to phone him every Monday morning, just make a nuisance of myself. And mid-March, he contacted him again, and he said, "Look, I think we have something coming up in April sometime." And then I never got another call. And then the one day I called him again, and then he said, "Oh, we actually starting the training on Wednesday. Are you available?" I said, "Okay, sure." And then I went, I think it was like almost a month's training, or month and a half's training. We would go to, there was a hotel in Sea Point, we'd go to that hotel, and it would be conducted by Eddie Marshall, Malvin Cross, all the established officials in Cape Town. And basically what they were doing the course that was actually documented by Stanley Kusudulu. It was his course that they were presenting for us. I did the course, completed the course, and then we had to do an examination. Now, I wasn't expecting such an intense examination, but we had to learn the whole act. So we had to basically know the size of the ring, the height of the ring from the ring floor, the distance between the ropes. Everything was covered, and then we did it. The examination was actually 3 hours, and I think I wrote for about 2.5 hours, and I tried to write as much as I could, and eventually I passed, and I was given my license.
Okay, so I think you've kind of led me into one of the discussions and the talking points that I wanted to discuss with you. Is that system that you went through? Is that system now in play for new officials coming to Boxing South Africa? And the reason why I ask you that is, as the trainer manager and as a partner in my company to a promotional group, I've seen some horrific scoring, horrific judging, horrific refereeing. Is that system that you remember doing in 1998 still in play?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, the regulator has lost the plot. That's not the case at the moment. At the moment, from what I'm seeing from being an official, how officials come in is basically you walk off the street, you go to the supervisor at the show, you tell him you want to become an official, and I think they let you sit at ringside and you judge a couple, and you do a couple of dummy scorecards, and then you eventually issued with your license. Because the licensing process is also one where they don't really test your ability. You basically go online, you pay the fee, and when they actually evaluate whether you are competent or not, that is not done during the licensing program. We had a case down in Cape Town, I think it was 3-4 years ago, where all of a sudden, when we went onto BSA's website, you could see the names of the official, and there was somebody there who was licensed as an official, but nobody knew who he was.
Right. I think it's important to also note, Deon, that when you did your program and your training, you were part of the old act of, I think it was 1955. The new act came into play in 2001, which if you look at the act now, even the act and the rules and regulations, it really does need to be amended because it's so outdated.
Yeah.
So possibly the only excuse that we could have for them not following that protocol is that there's a new act. But there are provisions in the act, funny enough, in the rules and regulations that officials have to be trained.
Yeah. Well, officials have to be trained, and they also have to do a medical. I've never done a medical. In all the time that I've been a BSA official, I've never done a medical.
So on that point, on medical, do you think, because I think this is something very important to note, is that you've seen some officials who I don't even think could do a sit-up. Do you think that officials, particularly referees, need to go through some sort of fitness assessment through Boxing South Africa?
I think so. You need to be in good shape, and you have to be able to move around and move around quickly at times. Also, the medical should also your eyesight. They should be able to evaluate. Are you able to sit at ringside and view the whole fight as such? Yeah, I think it's important, just as important as doing a course.
So before we get back into career, and this is obviously something very close to my heart, because bad officiating not only affects the fighter and the fighter's career, but affects the trainer, the manager, the promoter. Loss for a fighter, doesn't matter what stage of his or her career, is very detrimental. And that's what guys don't understand. That's what the public don't understand, is that, it's not like a soccer team or cricket team or even a tennis player losing a game where that team or that player can come back. Boxing is a very hurtful, brutal sport where your paycheck gets diminished if you lose. So what do you think, if Deon Dwarte could change one thing currently about South African officiating, what would it be and why?
Just one?
Okay. No. Let's open it up and let's talk about several factors or situations or issues that you think should be changed to better South African boxing. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Look, South Africa we have some good officials. We have some really good officials, but we also have some really poor officials. And what I would do if I was involved in with a regulator, I would impose an examination, evaluate everybody, grade them accordingly, and only let the top grade officials do the 12-round fights, and eventually and start empowering those who have not reached the A level to eventually reach that level.
So hold on, just on that point, is there a grading system currently when you say A grade referees or A grade judges? There's no grading system.
There used to be, I think, beginning of the 2000s, there was a grading system, but that used to just fall away. It's actually very disheartening, at times, because if you think of a sport like rugby, cricket, soccer, nobody will be. You cannot expect a official to walk in and referee a match between, say, Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates, and this guy and the official that you've assigned to do that match has done no examination, no written examination. He has never been evaluated, and yet you put him in that match. But in boxing, it can happen. You can be an official for a year, 2 years, without having gone through any training, and you can be put in the center ring, and you have to decide on a fighter's life, because that is the thing that people forget. This is a fighter's life. This is a blood sport. You can die in the sport, and I don't know. It just seems to go over the head of the administrators that you're putting somebody's life at risk. Look, you could have made it through that 2 years doing nice, easy fights. But at some point, you're going to get a difficult fight, and you're going to have to make decisions at the split second. And without that training, things can go horribly wrong. And fortunately, it hasn't as yet. Look, we've had a couple of ring deaths, but I don't think it was at fault of the official. But things can go horribly wrong, and we've got to be ready for that.
Do you think that there should be some recourse? I mean, we've seen a few officials, last year particularly, there was an official who was on national broadcast on Supersport, where the official blatantly elbowed a fighter for not listening. I think it was 2 or 3 blows. No, it could have been 2 blows, blatant with the elbow. Do you think there should be some recourse for Boxing South Africa on that?
Well, the act allows the act. You must remember. Well, according to the act, the supervisor has to submit a report on the conduct of the official, whether the official was satisfactory, not satisfactory. So, according to the act, any fight that is refereed, the supervisor should submit a report after each fight. So. And the act stipulates that.
So on that point, because I know you would have either seen the contest live or you would have seen it on socials, but to me that constitutes assault. In your opinion, even though both fighters are fighting in the ring and an official elbows another fighter, do you consider that assault?
I prefer not to comment on that because that official is currently licensed, and I prefer not to comment on that.
All right. On the point of calls, we've seen, and I think it goes back to more, the issue is more common sense and then the rules. And there's the famous referee in America called Jack Reese who says, playing by the rules or playing in the spirit of the sport. Now, for example, there's a rule in the Act for the Rules and Regulations of Boxing South Africa 2001, where if a referee's counting and the fighter gets up and he or she has his arms or her arms on the ropes, the referee is going to continue to count. Those are the rules. But then there's a spirit of the sport where you can assess the fighter as a referee during that moment. We saw that with Boyd Allen several years ago. And we recently saw that now with K9 Faree's opponent, Muhammad Wasiri, where he got dropped, visibly hurt, and got his arms up on the ropes. And the rules are, you count the fighter out. This official chose not to and assessed the fighter. And I know there was a lot of controversy on social media and so forth. But for me, as a trainer and manager, and as a boxing fan by heart, I want to see in the spirit of the sport. So assess the fighter, pull the fighter's arms down, ask him to walk to you, ask him where he is, ask him a question. So, cognitively, the fighter, he or she knows where they're at. What's your opinion on the rules and then in the spirit of the sport?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
And sorry, just before you answer that, it's because as a fan, you take a lot of action and play away from the fan who's paying good money to watch that fight.
Yeah. Yeah, the people pay money to come watch a fight. I mean, for a fight to be stopped on a technicality like that, like I've got my hands on the rope, but I'm fully aware of what's going on. I'm fully aware. Just take the hands off the rope, wipe it down, and let them continue fighting. And that is why I'm of the opinion that the act needs to be amended. And in my opinion, the rules shouldn't be in the act. The act should refer to a rule book, and the rules should be separate. Because remember, we're in a sport that evolves constantly. There's always new things happening. And for instance, if in South Africa we don't have TV referees, where if there's a knockdown, they evaluate whether there's a knockdown or not by looking at a TV screen. We didn't have that because it's not in the act. And we know how the regulation process in South Africa works. If you want to change something in an act or the regulation, it can take 3 to 4 years just for that process to get. That's why I'm saying have a separate rule book and we work according to the rule book. And if you want to change something, you can change something in the rule book that will make the sport more appealable to people.
Here's a question that's probably burning, and you probably get asked this a lot, and so do I. Will we ever stop bad decisions in boxing?
Yeah, because
is that based on the human perception, or,
yeah,
or one judge likes a certain style, or has a favorite, or subconsciously listens to the emotional headspace going into the, like? How do you think? Why do you think that?
Because people, if you must remember, judges are sitting at three different viewpoints. You don't get the benefit of a replay. You've got to make a decision and in a close fight, it can be from your vantage point what you're seeing. So there's always going to be a little bit of discrepancy in the scoring of a fight. But at the end of the day, there is certain criteria that's got to be followed. So for a person to say that, oh, I like a fighter going forward, or I like a defensive fighter, that's irrelevant. There is a criteria that's got to be followed. And maybe in South Africa, we don't know how to apply that criteria. I've noticed we've had a lot of review fights recently, where fights have been reviewed. So, like I said, there's a set criteria. And number one, I'm going to tell you the way I do it. Number one is effective clean punches on the target area. That's the first thing I look at. If both fighters are very similar, then I look at the second criteria, which is effective aggressiveness. And then if I still can't make a decision, then I look at ring generalship. Who was controlling the fight? Who was dictating and making the other fighter fight his fight? So that's why I have not scored an even round in boxing for, I think, probably like the past 10, 11 years. I've never scored an even round. Because at one time, I can recall I scored 2 even rounds in a 12-round fight. And I think it was probably like 3-4 days after that, I got an email from that sanctioning body, and they told me I'm paid to make a decision. And since then, I've never, because you must remember, if you've paid to make a decision, you've got to make a decision. As difficult as it is, you've got to say it's either boxer A or boxer B. So I very rarely score a 10 round. I always go one way or the other.
I think looking back in your career, and I'm sure there's certain moments that you could take back. Does any moment in your memory, in your career, stand out where you think, oh man, I wish I could have that fight over again as a referee? Because as a judge, you sit there and you're impartial and you make a score and you make a decision. But as a referee, if you think back to your career, and it's been a very decorated career, and we'll get into that now. But are there any moments or any fights you think to yourself, man, I should have maybe given the kid more of an opportunity or taken that one back? Are there any fights in your memory that stand out?
Not really. I stand by every decision I've made. Look, I might have made a mistake here and there. I think I think earlier this year there was a fight at Empress Palace where the South African went down. I called it a slip. That's on me. I was moving around behind the fighter. I missed the punch. From my vantage point, it looked like a slip. I couldn't call it a knockdown because I didn't see the punch. If you don't see it, you can't call it. And I saw him going down, and I called it a slip. But while I was counting, I looked in his eyes, and I'm sorry, not while I was counting. When I waited and I told him to stand up, and when he turned around, I could see. Okay, he took a punch. He went down because of a punch. That's why.
Yeah, I think that was the Rourke Knapp Garcia fight.
Yeah,
and again, I think it's important to note, Deon, that's we're humans, we're fallible.
Yeah,
we do. It wasn't done deliberately.
Yeah.
You made an honest mistake. I mean, inevitably, Rourke Knapp, disappointingly for South African boxing, got knocked out in that fight. But it happens. And on that point on referees making mistakes, and I think it's important to note, like me being in the corner as a manager, as a trainer, obviously wanting my kid to win, we obviously get very emotionally charged and worked up. But equally, we also need to understand that the referee in the ring is fallible. They're human. The problem that I'm having, Deon, and I'm going to be honest with you, as the South African manager, I'm seeing too many of the same officials making too many blunders. And that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on my show to discuss that. And it's not like we're bitching or moaning about a particular individual. We're talking about the standard needs to be changed in boxing South Africa. They need to do more workshops. They need to get guys like you standing up and explaining to the younger generation. Because at the age of 55, and I want to get into your highlight of your career, we're all going to get old. That's the reality of what we do. And it's important that the next generation, because we've got young fighters coming up. We've got 18, 19-year-old kids embarking on professional careers. And when they get into the ring, when I walk my fighter into the ring and in the corner and I see the official, I need to know that my fighter is going to be protected by that referee. And I think it's important to be cognizant of the fact that boxing South Africa actually need to pull up their socks and say, wait a minute, there's a problem, there's a challenge. Let's fix this problem and let's face the challenge head on.
I agree, but that comes back to training. You can do training, but you also need constant refresher training. You need to do it at least once a year. I'm fortunate that I attend the international conventions. I'm affiliated to two of the major organizations, so I attend 2 training courses a year, and that's the only reason why I think that I've been consistent. I think if others had the opportunity, they would also be consistent. But also, if it comes to with the grading and the supervisor's report, then that official should be, if that supervisor's report is honest and it evaluates the official based on his performance in that ring, that official should be put back, held back a little bit until he has met the standard to again officiate a title fight or so.
So I'm going to ask you a controversial question. Out of 10, how would you rate South African, 10 being the greatest and 0 being the worst? How would you rate boxing South Africa's officials in this current state of affairs in South African boxing out of 10?
I'd say 5. Yeah.
Considering you've traveled the world, you've worked international events. And on that point of international events, I just want to make mention to the listeners and the guys who are going to be watching this podcast that Deon Dwarte is the only African and South African referee to have refereed a unified heavyweight championship of the world, with Anthony Joshua defending against Kubala Pulev. And that obviously, well, let me ask you, was that the highlight of your career?
I don't know if it was the highlight, because I didn't enjoy it. I think my nerves got the better of me, and I didn't enjoy it at all. I was so nervous. I didn't enjoy the week in the bubble. I didn't enjoy the fight. I don't know. I think because I'm the type of person, I get very nervous before a fight, and I go through I have a strict regime like that I follow before a fight, and for that fight I was just nervous, and I think the pressure of that fight also, because it was a lot of media attention in South Africa, regarding that fight, because I was doing that fight, and I didn't enjoy it. That's why next time I'll fly under the radar.
So let me ask you, if you had like one of the highlights, what would be your top 5 or top 2 highlights of your career?
I think the fact that my very first refereeing assignment, international referee assignment, happened to be in Mzonke, the guy that actually got me, because he was involved in the fight that actually triggered me to get involved in boxing. So when I refereed his very first IBF defense of his title. So I think that always sticks out to me, that because of the connection there.
And your best venue in South African boxing?
Ooh. I think Orient Theatre, just because of the crowd, the noise, the enthusiasm of the people there. I enjoy Orient Theatre. Look, I also enjoy Empress Palace. For some reason, I know there's a lot of critique about it, but I enjoy it because it's always well organized. So for that reason, I enjoy doing Empress Palace. But if you look solely in terms of boxing and the people in the Eastern Cape, they love their boxing, and I enjoy officiating in that area.
Would you agree that 2024 has been a much better and productive year for South African boxing compared to last year, 2023?
Last year was terrible. I think it was terrible because of the administrators.
Yeah, absolute clowns. I mean, I've been vocal about that. I'm not going to pull my punches. That's why I call the show No Punches Pulled. Absolute clowns. Yeah. I mean, those guys should hang their heads in shame. They really, really should. With the GNU, with Minister Gator McKenzie obviously coming into play, and he's just kind of taken office the last few months. Do you think we're going to see major shifts in 2025 for South African boxing?
I don't know. I hope so. I really do hope that we can get boxing back to where it used to be. And when I say where it used to be, I'm talking about late 80s. That was when boxing was big. I mean, how many champions didn't we have coming out of the Eastern Cape? I'm just hoping that something triggers and they can get boxing back. But it's not going to be overnight thing. It's not going to be overnight thing. I think it's going to take a process. I'm thinking, well, if we start the process now, hopefully within the next 5 years we can start seeing the fruits of the change. But let's just see what happens.
Deon, in closing, your last question, I wanted to ask you, what other ambitions do you have as an official? I mean, is there anything specific you want to do, another heavyweight title fight, or because you are arguably next to Stan Christopher, probably you're right up there. Where do you see your career? Because you're still relatively young at the age of 55. Are there any dreams and ambitions that you still want to achieve in the sport?
No, not really. I just want to keep on doing what I'm doing, and I don't have any aspirations of doing X fight or something like that. I just want to go, and I want to enjoy sitting at ringside and doing fights. But I also don't want to overstay my welcome. I don't want to sit at ringside and then eventually someone has got to come and tell me your scoring's a bit off. I want to leave it on my own terms. So I'm thinking, well, I'm 55 now, maybe 65, maybe call it a day, and see if I can go another route. But I always want to be involved in boxing, because I think there's too many people that overstay their welcome in the sport.
Deon Dwarte, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us on No Punches Pulled. We will see you again next time.
This is Omnisport Africa, We're putting African sport first. Live and on demand on your phone. Data free on the MTN network in South Africa. T's and C's apply. And online at omniaudio.africa. Because reading about it tomorrow won't help you today.